Chapter 4, verses 1 through 100. 1. Oh, you people of your kind, human beings, do not be afraid of the truth, neither of the laws and recommendations of the wellspring of all life, creation, because only in them is true love and equitableness, fairness. 2. You have been created in your origin from the wellspring of all life, creation, and you have made yourselves companions as man and wife, and have multiplied. Heed one another, and be afraid of doing unright to one another, so that you may be good to one another, and make requests instead of issuing commands. Uphold the bonds of relationship between one another, because both as woman and as man you have entered into life as people of your kind, human beings, therefore amongst you the only. Differences are the body, sex, and the nature, thought world, feeling world, character, actions and behavior, feelings, the power, the attraction, charms, and the capability, ability of pregnancy. Truly, as woman and man are in inequality, difference, in these things, yet in existence they have common duties and rights, so that neither the man shall stand above the woman in any things, nor the woman above the man. And just as man and woman undertake the same work, so they shall receive their wages equally, so that neither the man nor the woman is paid more than the other for the same labors. 3. Truly, equitableness, fairness, is when man and woman grant each other the same duties and rights, although it shall be rightful for the one party who has the greater proficiency, empowerment, for certain duties and rights to be involved more for these. 4. And it is rightful that congress, sexual intercourse, between man and woman shall only be permitted if consent is granted. If, however, the woman or the man is induced into congress, sexual intercourse, by Goblet, then a defilement violation is carried out which shall result be prosecuted by right and law with the fulfillment of guidelines, punishment. 5. And as you create descendants, it shall be done in the measure of insight, rationality, so that the standard measure of the number of all peoples, humankind, does not get out of control in a very bad wise and result in a moderateness, overpopulation, and the world and its weathers, the appearance, nature, and all life on earth do not suffer great and lasting damage. Destruction of the environment, destruction of the climate, extinction of forms of life, wars, crimes, etc. Therefore, the recommendation of insight, rationality, and of control over extent is given for obedience, following, so that no calamity may come over you and your world. Consequently, it is recommended that you keep yourselves within bounds, limits, and monitor the standard measure of the number of all peoples, and that you undertake, carry out a measurement, census, every certain number of years, so that the measure of all inhabitants of earth does not become too great and remains within the number of the maintainable, supportable, without leading to harm. 529 million. 6. And if you have orphans, then give them their possessions which belong to them, and do not exchange good things for bad, and do not live off, steal their possessions in order to combine them with your own, because such actions are unrightful and despicable, and mark you out as unfair ones, irresponsible ones, and unrighteous ones, conscienceless ones, if you do them. 7. If you are afraid of not being fair to orphans and of doing wrong towards them, then learn from the laws and recommendations of the wellspring of the love, creation, and from the truth teaching of the true prophets which way you must take and what actions you must use in order to be fair to the orphans. And if there are orphans who could be taken by people in union, married couple, or by a woman or man alone as their own, adopted, then it is rightful for the children to be rightfully provided with everything necessary and given instruction, education, which shall be inspected, checked by the authority. If there are half-orphans without a father or mother, then do a noble deed and take the half-orphans to be your own when you enter into a bond, marriage, with the mother or the father, so that the children may have a true father or a true mother in love. And if you join with Mary, the mothers or the fathers of half-orphans then behave equally towards the children without any difference as if you had begot them yourselves. If, however, you have to fear that you act inequitably, then do not enter into either the bond, marriage, or taking the children as your own, adopting them, because that is the simplest wise for you to avoid unright. 8. And if you have orphans who are living in places for orphans, orphanages, or for whom you are caring, foster parents, and who are growing up with you and are provided for and brought up by you, then care for them until they have grown out of youth, grown up, And if you perceive understanding and obligation, responsibility, with them in good measure in all things when they have grown up, come of age, then issue them with their possessions so that they may decide what to do with them themselves. And take care that you do not swindle them by claiming the orphan's possessions for your own. However, also make sure that the orphans, when they have grown out of their youth, grown up, and come to their possessions, do not consume them hastily or wastefully. And it is rightful, if the orphans inherit great wealth from their parents, the parents of their parents, grandparents, or the godparents, sponsors. For the place is for orphans, or you as foster parents to live on it according to equitableness, approval, fairness. If, however, the places of orphans, or you as foster parents are wealthy, then it is rightful for the orphans' possessions not to be used. And when you give the orphans their possessions, have witnesses in their presence, and also have the issue of the possessions recorded in an accreditation, receipt, which is sufficient for the reckoning. 9. Indeed, if you consume the possessions of orphans unrightfully, then you are only swallowing fire and smoke, and you will burn with flaming fire in your inner when your admonishment, conscience, calls you to account. 10. And you, man and woman, who are in a bond marriage, give one another voluntarily and benevolently gifts of thanks for this and that, whether it be an embrace, a flower, a caress, or whatever else that speaks of thanks and love and esteem. In the bond marriage, share everything out of your own free will amongst yourselves and enjoy everything as delight and pleasure in mutual inclination. 11. And if you have irrational ones, deranged, feeble-minded ones, amongst you, then you shall not allow them to conjoin marry, neither shall you yourselves enter into a bond with them. And if you are the keepers, carers of irrational ones, deranged, feeble-minded ones, then do not entrust them with your goods and fortune for their welfare, but nourish them with it, and clothe them, and speak friendly words to them, just as you shall be helpful with advice and deeds. 12. Both the man and the woman are due a certain proportion of that which parents and close relatives leave behind, whether it is little or much, depending on the allotments made by the leavers behind, bequeathers, in a document of assignment, last will. The fair, tolerable rule for dividing up the heritable goods, chattels, and wealth is that in the event of a bond marriage, the surviving woman or surviving man shall receive 2 parts, 2/3, of all the goods and chattels and of the entire fortune and wealth, whilst the other part, 1/3, shall be apportioned to the surviving children in equal shares. If the father and mother lose their life, then their entire heritable goods, chattels, and wealth shall be apportioned to the descendants in equal shares, and if there are descendants from previous bonds, first marriage, second marriage, etc., then they shall be entitled to even shares with the descendants from the last bond marriage in the heritable goods, chattels, and wealth of the person in the bond marriage partner, who is their parent, mother, or father. 13. If a deceased's heritable goods, chattels, and wealth, heritage, have to be distributed, then it is rightful for any debts and other payments to be settled first before any distribution amongst the descendants. And know that your wife or your husband, as well as your fathers, mothers, and children are always closest to you. Wherefore this establishment of the heritage is given in this wise, so that equitableness, fairness, and equality may be upheld amongst all. 14. If, however, a man and a woman are in a bond marriage, and do not have children, and the woman or the man dies, then the entire heritage belongs to the surviving partner, man or woman. And if people without a bond, unmarried people, or descendants, family, die and they do not have any children, then their entire heritage shall be apportioned equally amongst their brothers and sisters. And if there are none of these either, then their place shall be taken by the next closest relatives. And if children, sons, and daughters die who do not have their own family, then their entire heritage shall fall to their parents, or in any case half of the entire heritage if a document of assignment, last will, decrees something different for the other half. 15. And if brothers and sisters die when both parents have already died, and if none of the brothers and sisters are in a bond marriage, and if none of them have any descendants, then all shall receive equal shares in the entire heritage of the deceased. However, at least half of the entire heritage if a document of assignment, last will, decrees something different for the other half. 16. And because of equality and equitableness, fairness, it is not permitted for any reason whatsoever for entitled ones entitled to inherit, of heritages to be disadvantaged by a document of assignment, last will, or excluded from the heritage. 17. And it is decreed for your children that female and male children shall receive equal shares of the goods and chattels and the wealth of the leavers behind, bequeathers, mother or father, so that no more shall be apportioned to one party than to another, and that equality and equitableness, fairness, may be given, and neither the female nor the male descendant be preferred. 18. And if other relatives and poor ones or orphans are present at the allocation of the heritable goods, chattels, and wealth, dividing up of the heritage, and if they are not taken into account therein, then give them something from that which you receive as inheritance, and speak with them in kindheartedness and with friendly words. If, however, you receive an inheritance, then you shall not fall into dispute amongst yourselves because of it, for it is rightful for each of you to be satisfied with the share that is granted to you by the leaver behind, bequeather. 19. And those amongst you who cannot yourselves leave any heritage when you depart this life, you shall not be afraid for this reason or concerned, because there are no grounds for shame, and it prevents much dispute. 20. These are the guidelines and set barriers derived from the recommendations of equality and equitableness, fairness, so that equality and equitableness, fairness, but no disadvantage, may prevail all around, and so that neither strife nor resentment and neither jealousy nor acts of revenge may come about amongst entitled ones entitled to inherit, from those left behind, family. 21. However, anyone who transgresses these recommendations of regulation and reckoning is not only creating a calamity in themselves, but also all around amongst those who are involved. Therefore, disparagement, contemptibility, defilement, abasement, dishonor will not fail to come about. 22. And if a man or a woman amongst you commits chastisement violation by defiling, misusing, violating children, or a woman or a man at their sexual organ, then call for witnesses and request the jurisdiction to subject the fallible ones to fulfillment of guidelines as punishment, and separate women from men or men from women, exclude from society and from the other sex, for an appropriate time. 23. And if two women amongst you, or a man and a man, have congress together, engage in sexual union, then they shall not be punished, because a woman and a woman in sexual congress, sexual union, is given by the laws of appearance, nature, so that they may copulate together if the need arrives. However, if a man and a man have sexual congress with one another, then that is against the law of appearance, nature, in such a wise, unnatural, because they cannot copulate fruitfully to produce offspring. But it is in the law of appearance, nature, that sexual congress, sexual union, between man and man is natural, unnatural naturalness, and only serves love and sexual satisfaction, gratification. Therefore, neither man and man, nor woman and woman, are committing an unright when they have sexual congress with one another, sexual union. Therefore, they do not bring down punishment on themselves, nor do they have any need for regret or improvement. So there is no requirement to open up a way out of their penchant, disposition, and they shall live in peace as ones with a different nature and sexuality. Lesbians, homosexuals, amongst those who practice their sexuality between man and woman. 24. Truly, hard punishment and remorse for any doings only are of value if something evil is done knowingly, consciously. If something evil is done unknowingly and a law or recommendation is infringed, then lenience is appropriate, and the punishment should be set such that mild commensurability is provided. 25. Remorse cannot be accepted from those who continue in their evil doings, because they are only making a show of remorse and do not consider ceasing their evil doings, for which reason they shall be subject to a hard punishment in a place of fulfillment of guidelines, remote place or remote island, for a certain time, in order to experience true remorse, so that they may be honestly connected to remorse and cease their evil doings. 26. Those amongst you, man and woman, who are connected to one another in a bond, marriage, in truth, equitableness, fairness, and in reckoning, it is not permitted for you to appropriate the goods and chattels and wealth of the other party against their will, neither shall you withhold the goods and wealth of the other party unlawfully, or take away a part of it. And whatever you have given to one another shall not be demanded back, even if you are harmed by disgracefulness, badness, or if you break your bond, because a gift present is given in good memory that, given at its time, has its value and cannot be taken back. Therefore, demanding it back is the same as theft. 27. If you feel in yourselves anger or unwillingness, aversion, against the bonded companion, against man or woman, then also remember what goodness has been given by the other, and what has been given in goodness and badness on your part, so that you make an assessment, pay attention, consider, from both sides in order to reach a truly fair, commensurate arbitration decision, and act in a decent wise. 28. And if you, woman and man, have already pledged, promised, vowed, a bond marriage to one another, and if you nevertheless go your own ways again, separate, dissolve the betrothal, and you have already given one another treasures, jewels, property, presents, then do not take any of it back, because a gift, present, is given in good memory that, given at its time, has its value and cannot be taken back. Therefore, demanding it back is the same as theft. 29. Gifts, presents that have once been given shall remain gifts, presents, for all time and in all circumstances, and never be demanded back unless the one who demands back the gift, present, accuses, incriminates himself or herself of having lied. 30. Truly, you cannot take back gifts, presents, from one another either if you have been alone with one another, joined in sexual intercourse. Whether you have slept with one another, had sexual intercourse in a fixed bond, marriage, or only in confidential unity, mutual liking. 31. And it is rightful, if you are not in a bond marriage, that you lie with, have sexual intercourse with, one another in confidential unity, mutual liking. If you do not yet have a wife or a husband, you are single, and you have come of age, grown up. But at the same time it shall be that a touchable companionship, open friendship, exists, and not, however, a wild disorderliness, wild promiscuity, of changing partners with whom you lie, have sexual intercourse. If you are, however, in a vow, betrothal, for a bond marriage, to be entered into with another man or woman, then it is unrightful if you lie with, have sexual intercourse with others, and it is not rightful if you lie with, have sexual intercourse with one another if you are in an untouchable companionship, platonic friendship, with one another. 32. And it is rightful that the woman has one man only, because it is only through one man alone that a procreation, fertilization, for descendants can come about. A man, however, may have 3 women, because he is capable of undertaking several procreations, fertilizations with several women, but it is given for him to be able to be fair to all women in all things, and in their provision, and in their equality. And if a man has several women, then a bond marriage applies with each of them, within which the other women are also included, and of which they also partake. 33. And it is not rightful if people in union of a bond marriage, with a man or woman, lie with, have sexual intercourse with another man or another woman who is not included in the bond, because that is a breach of the bond, marriage, and shall be punished by the jurisdiction with a fulfillment of guidelines in a place of fulfillment of guidelines, secluded place, isolated island, for a certain time. 34. And it is not rightful, and means blood disgrace, incest, inbreeding, to enter into a bond marriage with a woman who is intimate with, married to, your father or forefather, grandfather. Therefore it is not rightful, and amounts to blood disgrace, incest, inbreeding, to enter into a bond marriage with a man who is intimate with, married to, your mother or foremother, grandmother. Therefore a hard punishment shall be meted out by the jurisdiction if something of this kind is done, undertaken. 35. And it is not rightful, and means blood disgrace, incest, inbreeding, if a father or mother enters into a bond marriage or lies with, has sexual intercourse with his or her sons or daughters. Therefore a hard punishment shall be meted out by the jurisdiction if something of this kind is done, undertaken. 36. And it is not rightful, and means blood disgrace, incest, inbreeding, to lie with, have sexual intercourse with, your father or your mother. Therefore a hard punishment shall be meted out by the jurisdiction if something of this kind is done, undertaken. 37. And it is not rightful, and means blood disgrace, incest, inbreeding, if brothers and sisters enter into bonds, marriages, with one another, or lie with, have sexual intercourse with one another. Therefore a hard punishment shall be meted out by the jurisdiction if something of this kind is done, undertaken. 38. Therefore man and woman are not allowed, it is forbidden for them, to enter into a bond, marriage, or to lie with, have sexual intercourse with, their mothers and fathers, their daughters and sons, and the daughters and sons of their own daughters and sons. And it is not allowed for man and woman, it is forbidden for them, to do so with their sisters and brothers, as well as the sons and daughters of their brothers, and the sons and daughters of their sisters. And the same applies to the sons. and daughters of the sons and daughters of their brothers, as well as to the children of the daughters of their sisters and the children of the sons of their sisters. Therefore protection shall be granted you as far as the third generation, so that no blood disgrace, incest inbreeding, may occur. 39. And it is not rightful, therefore it shall not occur, that related mothers and fathers, stepfathers, stepmothers, and adoptive fathers, adoptive mothers, lie with, have sexual intercourse with the related children, stepchildren, and adopted children. Therefore a hard punishment shall be meted out by the jurisdiction if something of this kind is done undertaken. If there are joined children, stepchildren, who are not taken as your own, not adopted, then their protection shall take the form of their age until the time when they come of age, grow up, following which they may be raised to the status of a bond marriage by the joined father, stepfather, or the joined mother, stepmother, if this is in accordance with the will of the children and that of the father and the mother. 40. However, it is rightful if a man has several women at the same time who are sisters, and he takes them into his hearth, home, in a bond marriage. 41. And it is not rightful to have congress, sexual relations, with a man or a woman if that man or woman is intimate with another man or woman in another bond marriage. 42. And it is rightful and allowed for you, if you are not in a bond married, to look for a man or a woman with all your means of uprightness and in a noble wise, providing you do not commit any immoral and unseemly sexual behavior, and you enter into a bond marriage with the man or woman and found a clan family. And it is rightful and permitted for not only man and woman to found a clan family, but also for a woman and a woman and a man, to whom it is also permitted to take orphan children as their own by adoption, so that their line, family name, may be continued. 43. And for the joys that you receive from one another as man and woman, you shall give one another the gift of true love, so that you always live in harmony and are good to one another. 44. And there shall be no defilement for you in anything that you mutually agree upon, whether it concerns your union, sexual intercourse, or your ingenious skills, practices. In this, because nothing shall be disallowed, forbidden, to you that you do with one another in mutual consent for your joys and your delectation. 45. And those of you who cannot afford or do not want to enter into a certified bond, officially certified by the authority, then it is rightful for you to enter into a valid bond, marriage, without evidence, authorization from the authorities, and to have all the same rights as those who have evidence from the authority. Thus this also applies to bonds, marriages, between woman and woman, and between man and man. 46. And it is not rightful to coerce a man or a woman into a bond for whatever reason. Yet hard punishment shall be meted out by the jurisdiction if this is contravened. 47. And if you are guilty of sexual excessiveness and fornication, sexual culpability, and of sexual enticement, whoring, when you have entered into a bond marriage, then the jurisdiction shall impose a hard punishment on you, as shall be prescribed by a fulfillment of guidelines. Therefore the same shall also apply to those amongst you who are only guilty of making an approach attempt, so that you may fear the unrightful doing and hold back, because that is better for you. 48. Therefore it is rightful, if you have undertaken to be true through a bond marriage, that you do not bring any fornication, sexual culpability, onto yourselves, and do not get involved in any harlotry, prostitution, and do not take lovers to yourselves in secret, either a man or a woman. 49. And do not consider taking the purity, chastity, innocence from a man or woman out of pure revelry, sexual urge, and lustfulness, greed, so that you can fulfill your craving, desire, and give fullness, sufficiency, to your boastfulness amongst people of your kind, human beings. 50. And do not debase yourselves by sexual excessiveness and fornication, sexual culpability, and sexual enticement, whoring, by falling prey to lying with, having sexual intercourse with partners out of drunkenness, desire, or taking possessions in a whore's payment. 51. And it is recommended for you to uphold the laws of people of your kind, human beings, so that everything will be granted to them that belongs to them. Therefore also freedom, as slavery as well as other trafficking in people of your kind, human beings, and servitude as well as bondage contravene all rights, and are reprehensible as well as disallowed, forbidden. You shall turn to people of your kind, fellow human beings, in kindheartedness and love, and not harm them in any wise. 52. You shall ease the burden of the existence for yourselves and people of your kind, fellow human beings, because you are weak through your unknowing of the truth of the primal power, creation, and its laws and recommendations. Therefore you shall bring about assuagement for yourselves and people of your kind, human beings, by turning yourselves to the truth teaching, the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, so that it may go well with you. 53. Do not split up, share your possessions amongst one another with illicit, forbidden, means deception, theft. Obtain, earn everything with honest commerce and in mutual consent. 54. And be reputable, honest, and righteous, conscientious to yourselves, so you shall not commit any outrage to your own body and life, and not kill, murder yourselves, neither shall you let yourselves be killed, murdered by deceitful murderers, and do not kill, murder, for the sake of another's possessions, and do not rob those who are going about their business, wayfarers, business people, etc., or who carry their wealth on their person, or keep it in their house, home. And yet whoever contravenes this law nevertheless in outrageousness and iniquity, unfairness, shall be severely punished by separation from men or women, cast out of society and separated by gender, and be excluded for a certain time through remaining in a place of fulfillment of guidelines, secluded place, isolated island, amongst people of their kind, and in separation of the sexes, only men or only women, so that they may feel the fire of admonishment, conscience, in themselves and become of right sense. 55. Keep yourselves away from the minor and the major things which are illicit, forbidden for you, and observe the laws and recommendations that are given in a fair, responsible, wise for the weal and for the protection of the life of all. Then you will contribute to love amongst all, as well as to peace, freedom, and consonance, harmony. 56. And do not desire that which sets others apart or what others have created, just as you shall not desire the possessions of another either. The things you want to have shall be created by your own power and righteousness, conscientiousness, so that every man shall have his share according to his merits, and so that every woman shall have her share according to her merits. Do not be envious of things that others have more of than you do, so that you do not become slanderers, calumniators of them, and you do not become thieves, deceivers and murderers, killers, if you dare to slander them, steal from them, deceive them, or rob them. 57. Consider, each one is given everything according to his or her merits, and so it shall also be in a bond contract. If you have concluded one with one another, so that one party shall not be disadvantaged whilst the other is advantaged, receives a benefit. Therefore everything shall always be regulated, so that both parties receive the same shares and rights, such that one does not have more than the other. And if you conclude a bond contract for a deal, then it shall be such that the one who is the grantor, seller, does not give excessive advantage to the receiver, purchaser, and the latter does not carry out his or her obligation towards the grantor, seller, tardily, does not discharge the responsibility. 58. And you stand in responsibility for all things both as man and as woman. And therefore it shall also be kept rightful in this wise if you enter into a bond, marriage, as well as if you are still without a partner, unmarried. Therefore, whether in a bond, marriage, or in the unmarried state, you bear the entire responsibility for every and each thing that you do. And in the bond, marriage, it is both the woman and the man who bear complete responsibility for the clan, family, and therefore the descendants as well as for the hearth, household, and possessions and wealth. And if everything is managed and created jointly, then all parties have an equal right to all possessions and wealth. But if the bond breaks apart, then everything that has been created jointly shall fall due in equal measure to the man and woman. If the man or woman brings his or her own possessions into the bond marriage, then every possession and the wealth shall be due commensurately, accordingly, to the one who brought it with them as their own, goods brought with them, which shall also apply if the bond marriage is dissolved. Neither man nor woman shall be preferred in the responsibility and management of the clan, family, and the descendants and the hearth, household, because the management and welfare of these are in the responsibility of both. But it shall be that the more discerning party, man or woman, bears a heavier responsibility than the less discerning party. And therefore it is rightful that both the man and the woman are obedient to one another in responsibility, and keep their joint secrets of the bond marriage. in public, and therefore do not talk with interveners, third parties, about it, so that the confidentiality of the unity of the bonded companions, marriage partners, may be retained. If, however, one bonded companion, married partner, behaves with intractability or vice or pathological craving, so that the bond, marriage, and the management of the clan, family, and provision for the descendants and welfare of the hearth, household, suffer harm, then the jurisdiction shall make a choice, decision, about the reprimand, so that the intractability, vice, or pathological craving may be counteracted and resolved. And if the intractable party obeys and demonstrates throughout 1 year that the evil has been rectified, then no further measure shall be sought against him or her. If, however, it becomes apparent after 1 year that the choice, decision, and the reprimand are being contravened, then the jurisdiction shall impose a punishment involving confinement to a place of fulfillment of guidelines, secluded regions or islands, for a time of 2 years for coming to terms, healing, recovery. If the fulfillment of measures, punishment by separation from society for a certain time, does not yield any benefit, success, then the bond, marriage, shall be dissolved, so that the harm and destruction of the clan, family, does not continue to grow. 59. And if a rift comes about between a man and a woman in a bond marriage, then one arbitrator each from the man's side and the woman's side shall be appointed to bring about a reconciliation between the man and the woman, so that peace and consonance, harmony, may reign amongst them. If, however, no reconciliation comes about, and the rift continues, then it leads to destruction, breakdown, of the bond marriage, so that this shall be dissolved 1 year after the desire for reconciliation, and 1 letter of separation each shall be given to the man and to the woman. 60. Direct yourselves in all things according to true equitableness, fairness, and do not set unright at its side, as you shall also do in the wise that you show kindheartedness and mildness to your parents and their parents, your grandparents, as well as for your brothers and sisters and relations, to your immediate neighbors and those who are strangers to you. Therefore you shall also act in the same wise towards the poor and needy, as well as the companions at your side and travelers, all of whom shall have the same rights as people of your kind, human beings, and to whom you shall grant these rights, because it is your duty towards people of your kind, fellow human beings. Do not be of pride, and do not be show-offs, loud-mouths, boasters, big-mouths, towards people of your kind, fellow human beings, since truly you make yourselves unpopular and unthinkable impossible, as you also prevent yourselves from being deemed as worthy, taken seriously. 61. Those amongst you who are stingy and mislead people of your kind, fellow human beings, in a stinginess and in stinginess, keep secret what has been granted to you and what you have created and the wealth you have achieved, so that you do not have to give to the poor and needy that part of which is their due from you. Then you are also practicing deceit with the share tax that you owe to the people's state, for its upkeep and for its efforts, in which case you shall be brought to punishment by the jurisdiction. 62. And those amongst you who share out, donate some of your goods and chattels and wealth, so that you are seen and praised by the people. You shall know that you are only being guided, led by evil and veracity for renown, and that falseness, deviousness, is your companion, and your only reward will be disaster. 63. Consider what will happen to all of you if you have fallen prey to stinginess and do not present, donate, some of your possessions and wealth to the poor and needy. Truly, you will find neither gladness nor love nor peace in yourselves, neither happiness nor consonance, harmony, and no true freedom, because you are captives of yourselves and of your stinginess. 64. Truly, not one iota of unright happens to any of you if you have fallen prey to unrighteousness, consciencelessness, and to stinginess, and the fire of admonishment, conscience, and dissonance, disharmony, as well as the fire of unlove and unfreedom and unpeace burns in you. Therefore be remorseful, and turn yourselves away from all your evil and from unright, and do good deeds, which you ought to redouble continuously, so that the good deeds multiply and are sufficient to grant you a great reward. 65. And consider that it will go badly with you, and that you will fall into great shame, if you stand before the people and witnesses are brought forth who call you as witnesses against yourselves and your unrightful doings, and against your unrighteousness, consciencelessness, so that you fall into disparagement, contemptibility, unworthiness, before the people. 66. Therefore the disparagement, contemptibility of the people will, one fine day, also strike those amongst you who persist in the unknowledge about the truth teaching and who rise up against the true prophets, because you grant your godliness, belief, to the priests and other servants, hands helpers of gods and tin gods, and slander, calumniate, and persecute the prophets because of their teaching and strive to kill them. And truly, those of you who do such things will wish on that day when knowledge of the truth ripens in you and overwhelms you, that the earth would be covered over you, because then the deepest things of the truth of the primal power, creation, will befall you, and you will wish to sink into the soil in your shame. 67. However, do not approach the truth out of evil striving if you are not of right sense, if the truth is denied, but do this only if you know what you want in a righteous, conscientious, wise, and in equitableness, fairness, in order to learn about the truth. Therefore you shall keep yourselves distant from the truth if you want to slander, calumniate it, just as you shall only then turn to it if you have a righteous, conscientious sense, because truly with an unrighteous, conscienceless sense the truth will remain closed to you. 68. And if you are traveling, man or woman, then do the same as in your own house, involving washing or bathing daily to maintain your purity, hygiene, as often as the occasion conditions require. And this also applies to sick people and those working under dirty conditions, and also when you come from the privy toilet. And it is also recommended for you to clean yourselves by washing or with a bath after you have lain with one another, had sexual intercourse, and man and woman remove your hair from your private parts in order to maintain your purity, hygiene, and health, and so that no vermin may lodge themselves there. However, do not defile, circumcise your sexual organ, so that it may be left in the status of appearance, nature, for the sake of completeness, and it may only be modified, circumcised, for reasons of health, medical surgical measures. And if you do not find any water for you to clean yourselves with, then obtain, take suitable cloths, towels, and use them to clean yourselves. 69. Do not listen to the false prophets, neither to the priests and servants, hands helpers, of gods and tin gods who bring you false teachings and obligations, religions, beliefs, and false modes, forms of attitude, behavior, as well as false and delusional customs, rituals, so that you may acquire it an erroneous assumption and stray from the way of the true truth teaching, and thus from the teaching of the wellspring of the life, creation, in order to burn in the fire of the untruth. An erroneous assumption. 70. Do not be those amongst you who twist, falsify the words of the truth from their correct positions in their true form. Because truly you hear the words of the truth, but you do not follow them. You hear the words of the truth, but do not really listen to them. And with your tongues, words, and lies, you conceal what is really in you in terms of untruth and unknowledge, and you attempt to slander, calumniate the truth teaching of the prophets and the truth of the creation. And truly it would be better and more upright for you to turn to the truth and listen to it, so that you do not curse yourselves because of your unknowledge and your slander, calumny. 71. Those of you who hear the teaching of the truth brought to you through the teaching of the prophets, strive to comprehend, understand, the teaching and to fulfill it has already happened before you with those who turn to the truth of the primal power, creation. Therefore do not destroy the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, and do not persecute the true prophets, and do not accuse, blame them of lying, deception, or unhonesty, so that you do not deceive yourselves and curse yourselves. 72. Truly, it cannot be of any good to you if you remain far from the truth teaching, and if you place gods and tin gods as well as priests and other servants of gods and servants of tin gods at the side of the wellspring of wisdom, creation. And whoever places gods and tin gods next to the wellspring of wisdom, creation, has truthfully devised a disaster in themselves. 73. Consider those who think they are pure and truthful in the truth, because they are trapped in the belief in a god or tin god fabulated, invented, by people of your kind, human beings, and lend their ear to the priests and servants of gods and servants of tin gods, and therefore miss the way of the truth only to live in hatred and jealousy, in desires, vices, wantonness, pathological cravings, urges, and in the pathological craving for revenge, as well as in the delusion of retaliation and of punishment, and only to wage battles, wars, to kill in many different wises and to do everything evil and bad, believing it to be rightful, such as the false prophets and priests of your belief and your obligation, religion, teach you, although it is evil, unright, and against the truth and against the equitableness, fairness of the life. However, the truth of the creation and its laws and recommendations do not know one iota of unright under which you and the people of your kind, fellow human beings, shall suffer. 74. Look at them so that you recognize them evidently as false prophets and as priests and other servants, hands helpers, for fabulated, invented gods and tin gods, and do not lend your ear to those who invent lies and slanders, calumnies, against the truth of the primal power creation, and against the true prophets, and against the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life. 75. Know about all those and recognize them who receive the truth teaching, but who nevertheless believe in bad untruths and who follow the malefactors, irresponsible ones, against the truth, such as false prophets, false teachers and priests and other servants of gods and servants of tin gods who lie to you and claim that you would be better guided as believers in their false teachings. But truly they slander, calumniate the truth so that you are led into delusion by them and will not find any truthfully helpers amongst them. 76. Those who lead you into confusion with false teachings, they do not have any share in the real truth of the primal power creation, and therefore they are not even able to explain, as much as the groove in a grain of corn of the truth and of the laws and recommendations of the primal power creation. 77. Truly, only the unfair ones, irresponsible ones, and unrighteous ones, conscienceless ones, and therefore the unknowing ones in the truth are envious of those amongst you because of the grace, kindheartedness, that you gain from learning about and following the truth. Indeed, it would be quite possible for them to gain grace, kindheartedness, in the same wise because the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, and all the wisdom derived from it is given to them in the same wise as to you. And if they followed the truth, then they would win in themselves a mighty realm of knowledge and wisdom, love and truth, as well as of peace and freedom and consonance, harmony. 78. Some amongst you know about the real truth of the wellspring of wisdom, creation, and you follow its way of nobleness, virtue, and of righteousness, conscientiousness. But many amongst you turn away from it, and so the shadow world blazes in you as a flaming fire. 79. At all times when you show contempt for and slander the truth of the wellspring of the life, creation, and do not turn yourselves towards it, as it has been brought by the teaching of true prophets, for all this time you are refusing your happiness and your well-being, your freedom and consonance, harmony, and your peace in yourselves, and as often as you burn your inner skin, inner nature, on the fire of unknowledge, just as often do you taste to the full your punishment that you have brought down on yourselves. 80. If you turn to the truth of the primal wellspring, creation, and do good deeds according to its laws and recommendations, then you form in yourselves blossoming gardens through which the streams of love and freedom, peace and harmony flow, wherein you will remain and enjoy yourselves in the benevolence of your existence. And in your status of your well-being, you will have pure and honest companions because you grant them access to the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, and to knowledge and wisdom, as well as access to the true and beneficial love and to the freedom in themselves, so they also may have peace and harmony in themselves, and you meet one another in solidarity and confidentiality, friendship. 81. Truly, the recommendations state that you shall only give your confidential matters of any kind to those who are worthy of them, so that they may be dealt with rightfully and held in esteem and passed on in dignity, be it a substantive case, a case of confidential advice, grief, love, care, discord, or a thing of the authorities, or juridical punishment or judgment. 82. And if you have to determine between people of your kind, human beings, in any things, then only decide according to equitableness, fairness, and according to the circumstances, but not, however, according to belief, assumptions, and apparent evidence, indications, so that you do not accuse unfairly, but only reach a judgment in rightness according to the laws of the primal power creation, and prescribe a punishment in a commensurate wise, and the hardest punishment in equitableness, fairness, shall be for a woman to be separated from men, or a man separated from women, exclusion from the other sex, as fulfillment of guidelines in a place of fulfillment of guidelines, secluded place, isolated island, where even the fallible ones shall be given everything necessary to learn about the laws and recommendations of the primal power, creation, and to follow them, as they shall also be given everything, so that they can obtain their provision, sustenance, and everything necessary, through the power of their own hands. 83. And if fallible ones have to be integrated into a fulfillment of guidelines, then the laws and recommendations of the primal power, creation, recommend that each punishment shall be given in a helpful and kind-hearted wise, but never in a wise of bodily, physical, chastisement, violation, or cruelty, torture, just as not by harming the psyche or killing in any wise, because such a deed of any kind is entirely against the laws and recommendations of the primal power, creation, which has arranged, determined, in any case that all life shall be shielded, protected, and untouchable. 84. All of you who turn to the teaching of the prophets, the teaching of the truth, teaching of the Spirit, teaching of the life, which is the teaching of the truth of the laws and recommendations of the primal wellspring of the life, creation, do not listen to your priests of gods and tin gods or any other servants of gods and servants of tin gods, but turn yourselves to the true teaching of the prophets and follow the laws and recommendations of the primal wellspring of the life, creation, and be willing only to the righteous ones, conscientious ones, who have the Goblet of direction, Goblet of authority over you, but ignore those who are unrighteous ones, conscienceless ones. And the same applies to the righteousness, conscientiousness, and unrighteousness, consciencelessness, of the authority, jurisdiction, demagogues, lords, Goblet rulers, provosts, and masters. 85. And if there is disunity amongst you, then present your concerns to a wise advisor, to truly wise ones, or to a true prophet, but not, however, to false advisors, false wise ones, and not to false prophets and priests or other servants of gods and servants of tin gods, as well as also not to people of your kind, human beings, who purport to be envoys or authorized ones, substitutes, of gods and tin gods, or who otherwise raise themselves up above themselves and above you as brilliant ones, sublime ones, or as endless ones, divine ones. 86. Do not bow down before what is presented to you as beliefs, assumptions, in gods and tin gods, but know about the truth teaching from the laws and recommendations of the primal wellspring, creation, which is revealed to you through the teaching of the prophets. And do not search for your rights from the indignant ones who are against the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, because you are recommended not to listen to those who advocate evil and want to lead you into confusion, far away from the right way. 87. And if the ones who are indignant against the truth teaching tell you that you shall come to them and to their false teaching of their false envoys, prophets, and priests and servants of gods and servants of tin gods, then show your unwillingness, aversion, against the hypocrites of the falseness, deviousness, and turn yourselves away from them. 88. Think it over and protect yourselves when the indignant ones against the truth teaching and the truth come separately, alone, and quickly to you, and look for help from you with false discourses, when they are struck by calamity, because then they will swear that they only wanted the good and the conciliatory, although this will only be a lie, because they will fall back into their untruthfully deeds once your help has brought them benefit. Success. 89. Heed the true attitude, mentality, of those who set themselves as indignant ones against the truth and look for help from you in order to deceive you. Yet do not turn away from them without giving help, but remind them of the truth and speak a strong word to them about their state of their false thinking and their slander, calumny, so that they may consider this and search for the way to the truth. 90. And consider that the true prophets do not come to you so that you obey them and their teaching, because truly they are only admonishers, teachers, and advisors, for you to strive for the truth of the primal power, creation, and find the way to it, so that you fulfill the laws and recommendations of the primal power, creation, and have a good life. The teaching of the true prophets is not a coercion and not a subservient subjection, obligation to obey, but it is given so that every one of you may illuminate yourselves, explain it, involuntary considering, and find the truth in order to turn towards it. 91. And those amongst you who have not yet found your way to the teaching of the truth, to the teaching of the wellspring of all life, creation, and its laws and recommendations, therefore who are still living in unknowledge of the truth and in lapses, slanders, blame, and unvirtues, you could find lenience, forgiveness, in the teaching of the truth, and therefore you would not dare to slander, calumniate the true prophets, to persecute them and threaten them with death instead of begging, asking for them for forgiveness for your disgraceful doings, so that you truly find sympathy, feelings for others, and benevolence from them. 92. Those amongst you, however, who are believers in gods and tin gods, because you lend your ear to the priests of gods and priests of tin gods, and other servants of gods and servants of tin gods, you cannot become ones who have knowledge of the truth until you place yourselves as judges over your own selves and above everything that is contentious in you, so that you may turn to the truth, teaching of the prophets, and no longer have any doubts in yourselves about your decision to connect yourselves to the truth and to join this acquiescence, forbearance. 93. And it is not commanded to you by the laws and recommendations of the creation that you shall kill people of your kind, fellow human beings, but a certain number amongst you leave your dwellings in order to kill and to break the law of the creation. You shall not kill in Ausartung. Truly, you are only allowed to kill when the necessity to protect your own life or the lives of your next ones requires it. But only a few amongst you abide by this, because through the false teachings of false prophets and false priests and other servants, hands helpers of fabulated, invented gods and tin gods, killing is more likely for many than the protection of the life. If you as descendants of your forefathers and foremothers, ancestors, forebears, who received the truth teaching in olden days before you, would do what you are requested to do, even today by the true prophets and by their teaching of the laws and recommendations of the creation, then it would truly be better for you, and you would be led to greater strength, a life more amenable to the laws of the creation, through yourselves and through your authority. 94. And truly, if you followed the laws and recommendations of the primal wellspring of all wisdom, creation, then you would receive a magnificent reward as thanks, and your life would be an honorable pleasure if you would only guide yourselves onto the right way of the truth. 95. Anyone who is diligent, obedient to the teaching of the prophets, the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life will always be amongst those who gain grace, kindheartedness, and love in life, and in whom there will be freedom and peace, and therefore also consonance, harmony. And whoever follows the truth will comprehend, understand, the truthfulness of the true prophets of the fair ones, responsible ones, and will see their signs, marvels, and enjoy their great wisdom. Truly they will also have the truthfully prophets as their best companions and teachers, because true kindheartedness emanates from them. 96. And those amongst you who know about the truth always take precautions so that you are not alone amongst the mass of the ones who have no knowledge of the truth, but that there are always several of you, in droves or many together, so that you are not annoyed, harassed, victimized by the believers in gods and tin gods, so that you may be connected to the truth in prudence and without peevishness. Consider that merely dwelling, living, as ones who are knowing of the truth in a minority amongst a large mass of people brings disaster, because the superiority of the number of ones who are unknowing of the truth in the mass of the people is always boundless in its intemperateness, excessiveness, against any small number minority. Therefore, as ones who are knowing of the truth, you shall not stand out imprudently amongst the collection mass of the people who are unknowing of the truth, but only raise up the word of the truth and teach the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life where it is asked for and desired, so that you do not commit misfeasance, proselytizing, and do not do the same as the obligations, sects, and religions, who look for and lure, bewitch and snare, believers with lying, deceit, and delusion in order to exploit them, beat them into subservience, and rob them off their own will and their own responsibility. 97. There are some amongst you who grow weak, faint-hearted, and lag behind, deteriorate in misery, if unfortune befalls you, but as you learn through the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life which is explained to you by the teaching of the prophets, then you will be full of activity, energy, and full of power, and will be strong, so that you know how to overcome even the worst disaster without breaking down. 98. And there are some amongst you who are overcourageous if good fortune befalls you, and you want to have more in the irrationality of your small thinking and in your greed. And if you gain profit from a deal with one of your kind, fellow human being, then you are robbing, plundering the human being for your own benefit, advantage. Therefore you cannot achieve any friendship between that human being and yourselves. And truly, if you would recognize those in friendship with whom you are conducting a deal, then you would achieve great successes. 99. And those amongst you who are connected to the real truth and therefore to the teaching of the prophets, only ever allow fair ones, responsible ones, and ones who are knowing of the truth to fight with the weapons of honesty, equitableness, fairness, virtues, esteem, and deference for the truth of the primal power, creation, and its laws and recommendations. And never be foolish enough to throw away your mortal earthly life because of the truth, because it is better to be quiet and silent, and to keep the truth only in you so that your adversaries do not bring you affliction and do not endanger your life. Therefore, because you fight only in yourselves alone for the truth of the primal power, creation, and thus for the truth teaching, a magnificent reward will be granted to you in that true love and peace will prosper in you, and freedom and consonance, harmony, will bring you well-being in your inner nature. 100. But what is the matter with those amongst you who do not fight for the cause of the truth, nor for the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, and therefore not for the teaching of the wellspring of all wisdom, creation, which is given by its laws and recommendations? And what is the matter with you who do not fight for the interests of the weak and the poor and needy, the women, the men, and the children who would like to be let out from their hardship and their misery and away from their oppressors, tyrants, despots? Truly, you are neither protectors nor helpers for them, because you leave them to waste away in their misery, but you will reap a disastrous reward for this.